Alabama fans, welcome back to enjoying Joyless Murder Ball. And if you're Jalen Milroe, welcome to the Heisman Trophy conversation. And for everyone out there, welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered postgame show. Alabama marches up to Camp Randall. The fourth quarter, you start seeing the Badgers jump around, and then Alabama jumps on the football and takes a substantial lead. 42-10 final score. And we got a lot to talk about with this offense and how it was clicking. But real quickly, make sure that you hit subscribe down below because this is your new home for all things SEC. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Hit the ring notification. That way you don't miss any single post-game show, any live reaction, any single Sunday fun day. Make sure that you follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. And to check out all of our great work, make sure you visit SECUnfiltered.com. While following us on the socials. This episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app and use the promo code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. Guys, you got the game of the year potentially in 2 weeks. Alabama back home against Georgia, a statement-defining moment. Make sure you use that promo code, $20 off on the GameTime app when you play SECU. Dave, Alabama needed to show that they could be the Alabama of old, and asked and answered away from Tuscaloosa. Basically, the same thing that you saw last week when a Big Ten team could have had that bully mentality against an SEC opponent. No, the SEC team brought the fight to the Big Ten opponent.
No, 100%. You kind of felt, this isn't some excuse. You just kind of felt once Tyler Van Dyke, who was going to potentially be a liability for Wisconsin in the first place, once he went out, it kind of just felt like, and Cole, we've talked about it before, anybody's backup. Hell, we got the South Carolina LSU game going on now. It's tough to win games in college football now with the backup quarterback. But I think Alabama really, defensively, gave up some yards, still some holes you feel like in that back end that need to be shored up. I feel like everybody kind of understands that. Wisconsin, not a team that can take advantage of it. But offensively, I do like this year, which I think a lot of people got a little frustrated last year with Tommy Rees, was until the SEC championship game, you really didn't see Alabama utilize Jalen Milroe in designed runs. You feel like you're going to see that a lot this year. Again, Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan playing to the strengths of their quarterback. They did it last year. Obviously, Michael Penix when they had Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, guys like that. That helps. Jalen, again, one of the more elite deep ball throwers, dude. Third level, dude's dropping it in a breadbasket. I think Bama is probably, again, I don't have the numbers to back these up, but just off the eye test, they look like they probably have the fastest wide receiver group in the conference. It looks like track speed. It just looks like two different teams out there from a speed, athleticism standpoint. I think the interior of the offensive line was as good as we've all said going in. Booker, Brailsford, Jaden Roberts, who's from your neck of the woods, North Shore, Houston kid. That interior offensive line, if they stay healthy, Bama's going to be able to run the football. I think with Jalen Milroe, Jam Miller, Justice Haynes. I was impressed with the offense. Yeah, it's boomer. I wouldn't say bust, but it's very boom for Bama very often. That's where that's where you would be concerned. Where it's can they generate any drives if they're going to have 12 play drives? I think at some point for them to reach their goal as they are. We'll see. But today, they handle business. 42-10, can't ask for much better than that.
You can't ask for a better performance. Here's what also you can't ask for. Anything less of your quarterback that you believe is going to be the difference maker in this offense. Just read the stat line. That tells you the entire story. And yes, stats sometimes lie, but when you're 12 of 17, 3 tutties through the air, 2 more on the ground, you're averaging a grand total of 5.4 yards plus 11.5 yards, and your offensive line is playing at an elite level up the middle. This is the type of football that we say makes you a contender. This is the type of football that when you go up against the Georgia Bulldogs, you go into Neyland Stadium and you play against Tennessee, you go have to face off against a team like LSU in Death Valley. You have to play at Oklahoma. You have to play Auburn. This is where you separate yourself. Alabama today was so impressive, in my opinion, on all 3 levels of the offense. Consistency passing on third down. They were great when it came to taking those deep shots. Yes, you had a couple of errant throws, but for the most part, it was almost flawless. Wide receivers stepped up in a big way. Jeremy Bernard gets a touchdown. You watch as now Ryan Williams, cheat code, should not be doing what he's doing at 17, bullying Big Ten cornerbacks. And you also saw the run game be potent outside of Jalen Milroe. Jam Miller, 71 yards. Justice Haynes, 8.5 yards per play. Everything that you wanted to see from this offense, everything that you want to see from this overall unit This is what makes Alabama dangerous. And for me personally, I got a lot of flack for saying Alabama was not the contender category for my overall rankings. And to be fair, last week you had questions, but I also said, watch the way they played those last 5 minutes against USF. That's the version of Alabama football that you don't want to go into war with on Saturdays. That was the version that you saw for nearly 3.5 quarters during a game up in Madison, where an environment sometimes takes control, but it never felt that way for the Crimson Tide.
No, I mean, it was, again, I feel like once Bama went up 21-3, scored at the end of the half, I heard Kalen DeBoer say, the game was over at half. That was your big finish. You're excited to see that. That's where Bama kind of took control of the game. And Wisconsin just wasn't. I even think with Tyler Van Dyke wasn't going to come back from 21-3. They weren't going to come back with the backup either. So I think, yeah, comfortable win. Still a lot. I mean, it's a coach's dream. You win big, get to have a good flight back home, a long flight back home. But you had a lot of things to work on. I think they know that. There's certain teams right now that match up really well with them in the passing game. We'll see. But again, Bama's got a week to go get ready for Georgia. Not a must win, but you would like to have it. You feel real good about it.
Dave, let's also talk real fast. I think the biggest takeaway, on top of having a quarterback that can be a Heisman contender, that can be a difference maker in the SEC, in a brand new offense, you walked away mildly healthy. There wasn't any major injury that you have to worry about going into the bye week, and now you get to prepare for 2 weeks ahead for Georgia with most of your starters at nearly full capacity.
I didn't hear what they said about Russaw with that. He went out with an injury. It looked pretty rough. At least a banged knee. He was limping.
But for the most part, you feel good about where your team is. I will say, there are a few moments that did allow you to get a little uncomfortable if you're an Alabama fan, simply because of the secondary. There still are questions when it comes to how the secondary can play. It's a lot of hit and miss. The positives of this team are through the roof. The fact that you were able to hold Braden Locke to 125 yards, it's good. But then you also gave up a touchdown. And that's where it's like, yeah, you don't want to look.
And he missed a couple deep. Yeah.
And he missed a few passes. And a guy like Nico Iamaleava is not going to miss those passes. Right. A guy like Stetson Bennett is not going to miss those passes. And again, these are little things. You have to talk about the minor mistakes because they could eventually become substantial reasons why you're trailing in the fourth quarter, whether it be at home, whether it be on the road. It's just nitpicking here. It wasn't a perfect performance, but it was as close to what you want to see offensively to perfect. And I think that that's what you take away, is that there are things to correct, but the things are correctable. That's a major attribute. And also, when Alabama's coming on offense, good luck stopping them. They are a juggernaut. It looks very similar and very much what you want to see last year, especially in the national championship for Washington. And they got the talent that automatically is going to be a difference maker. By the way, this is going to be the weakest team that Kalen DeBoer ever fields in Tuscaloosa, and they still feel like a team that when they're on their bells and whistles can go deep into a playoff run.
No, and the thing I take it, you're right. The offense, you feel like they're going to work Jalen Milroe into the run game consistently within scheme that they didn't do last year. Thing I like to see too, they had 13 penalties last week, 3 turnovers, 4 penalties, 0 turnovers. Definitely an improvement. That's something you go hang your hat on post game. Kalen DeBoer talking to his team, hey guys, we talked about it all week, cleaning up the mental mistakes, cleaning up the penalties. Hey, we're not trusting our technique, not getting the right leverage, so we're holding. Really talking to the offensive line, and you will conform me. And then the turnovers, guys, like that, you could lose to any decent team if you're losing the turnover margin 3-1 in a game. Like it just is what it is in today's college football. You didn't turn the ball over, really didn't even come close. I don't think you put one on the ground and you got back. But 4 penalties again on the road. Wisconsin had 4 penalties. I think that's something to hang your hat on as well. Yeah, I mean, I feel good about Alabama going down the line. I still feel like you had them. I forget what you had them. Coach, you have them. What'd you have them? 10-2.
I had them at 16.5. I had them.
What'd you have them? 10. What'd you have them?
I had them at 10-2. I had them at 10-2.
I still feel pretty good about that. Yeah.
I feel better about that actually more than ever before. I really feel good about this team now being at least in the playoff conversation, and they're going to be. Again, you got to realize, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not Alabama ends up being the best team on every Saturday, if you are 10-2 and you carry that script A, knowing what the ratings are going to do for the college football playoff, you're going to be in the dance. And that's the major attribute. You talked about turnovers. Alabama did get 2 takeaways in this game. They almost got a third down inside the red zone. Great punt return by Ryan Williams to be able to set up for another touchdown from Jalen Milroe. So overall, you're just sitting here saying, when things are clicking for Alabama, it just feels like they're in a second gear. And whatever happened last week, 2 things can be true. USF came to play. USF also made sure that this was their Super Bowl, and they delivered for 3.5 quarters, ran out of steam in the fourth. But also Alabama showed you that when everything is working for them, they can be a team that will take you down to the wire. They can deliver the punch. And the thing that's really important about this, Dave, you watched as an opponent prepared for you all week. Yes, you lose Tyler Van Dyke. That is a major reason why this game ended up leaning in favor of the Crimson Tide. But the other thing that also you have to realize, it's in your own backyard. You look like the one that's on the ropes, ready to go ahead and throw in the towel. It just felt that way. Alabama was the one delivering the punch. Alabama was the one that was striking first. Alabama was the one that was juking and jiving and making sure that there were misses. And when they got an open crease, they delivered the punch, the jab, the knockout swing.
And the knockout was right at the end of the half. Yeah.
And that is what you look at when you were talking about Alabama. That version of the Crimson Tide is good. Real quickly, before we go ahead and move on, I just want to say, Ryan Williams, at this point, you automatically feel so good about Kalen DeBoer as your hire simply because this is a 17-year-old that believed in the future of what Kalen DeBoer could do. Remember, he decommitted for a moment, then says, nope, this is the offense made for me. It's not just the offense made for him. It's an offense that is catering to him, and he is only going to get better with time. There was a young kid by the name of Amari Cooper who, when he was a freshman, set a standard coming in for Miami, Florida. And then guess what happened? Top 5 overall pick. You're looking at the same repetition with the guy in Kalen DeBoer now utilizing number 2 as the number 1 receiver.
Yeah, and his age is going to help him with the scouts too. Because by the time he graduates, with 3 years out, he'll be 19. Still a lot of years on an NFL contract there. They'll be fired up about that. A lot of
He'll be easily. Now, Dave, let me just go before we get on out of here. When you're talking about this Alabama team, what are some things that you're looking for to make sure you adjust before you welcome in Georgia? Because for me, I feel like that the tackle play has got to be a little bit better. It's okay in this game, but you are going to be facing off against different makers at the secondary. I mean, in the second level of the defense. You know what that pass rush looks like. You know how dangerous a guy like Michael Williams can be coming off the edge. So what do you look for if you're Alabama that you have 10 days plus to prepare for?
Bama in the SEC championship game, some of it was Georgia did have some injuries, especially the inside linebacker spot and in the middle. Bama took advantage of the interior defense of Georgia last year. When they had to go run out the clock to win the game, when Georgia cut it to possession, they never punted back. They just handed it off to Jalen Miller. I'll be honest with you, I like Bama's matchup, especially considering it's at home, against Georgia than I do Tennessee this year. I mean, like you were talking about with Nico, Brazel, Brew McCoy, dude, Thornton. You leave those. And to be fair to Bama, some of it's personnel. They lost some guys in the portal. You'd be talking different about this Bama team if they had Trey Amos and Caleb Downs back. We don't. But if Nick Saban never retires, you have that here. Some of it's not their fault. They got 6 scholarship cornerbacks and 3 of them are true freshmen. You're going to take your lumps a little bit. It comes with it. But no, what I would be interested in is, like you said, pass protection. I want to see the scheme. I want to see the defense a little bit here. How will Mike Bobo scheme up Alabama? Kirby and Bobo have been pretty conservative against Alabama in the past. It's no longer Nick Saban. So I'll be interested to see how they scheme up Cam Womack overall, though. But I think Georgia have a good plan offensively. I think the battle is going to be how much do they limit Jalen Milroe's legs. I think that's what it's going to come down to. Bama's run defense is going to have to be a little better, I think, too.
You got to give a lot of credit to Keon Sabb, 2 pass breakups. Yeah. You also got Devonta Smith.
He's been a good impact for Michigan.
They had moments in this game that you felt very confident in the direction of this team. It's
Malachi Moore's got to stay healthy, don't you think,
yeah.
Cole? He's critical.
He is your anchor of that defensive backfield, and if you have him on the field, you have a shot. If you don't have him on the field, you are in a lot of trouble. So it'll be interesting moving forward.
Yeah.
I do think that this is a game that has now garnered a lot more interest because, again, you watch as Alabama plays a certain brand of football, their style that is completely different than what you saw underneath Nick Saban last year, but maybe elevates the players that you have on your roster a bit more than Saban did last year. And when they are on their P's and Q's, this is a team that will be able to deliver that punch. It doesn't matter rain or shine, hot or cold, environment, atmosphere, game day time. You cannot disrespect Bama the way that we think. And a game like this, again, turns into a moment that you as a Crimson Tide fan hold your hat on and say, yes, we know what we saw against USF, but when you give us our first punch, don't make us get a second.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a good building game right there. You get 2 weeks to go work on Georgia. Again, not a must win. A game you'd like to have gives you a good advantage in the SEC standings. So we'll see about that.
Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on all the social channels. Hit the ring notification. We got live game day post-game shows from South Carolina. Potentially, we'll be breaking down the Mizzou game. So much to talk about with Florida versus Texas A&M. We also got matchups to talk about tonight. Georgia versus Kentucky. Make sure you're following Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show. Check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. And make sure you're following us on the social channels. Live reactions nonstop. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Bama Nation, you back. Roll Tide. Later.